Our dream of visiting Scandinavia became a reality at 11:15 a.m. on August 30th, 2025, when we left the Kelowna airport. Flying via Toronto, we arrived in Copenhagen 15 hours later at 11 a.m. local time. 4 days were spent in Denmark, primarily Copenhagen, then the rest of the time in Norway, 3 days in Oslo, 3 days navigating the popular self-guided tour entitled Norway in a Nutshell, and 5 days in Bergen. Scandinavia is expensive and fares keep increasing. This trip would not have been financially possible were it not for the long accumulated air miles. Not only did the air miles pay for the flight, but a hotel promotion, get 1 night free if you book 3, paid for the first 4 nights in Copenhagen at the cabin city. Our flight was on time, and it was only a 15-minute train ride from the airport to the train station. And our hotel was only a 10-minute walk away from the train station. We were thrilled to hear that our rooms were ready 3 hours ahead of the check-in time. The interior design of the hotels is inspired by functional ship cabins where space is optimally utilized. The founding Fennet family were inspired when they boarded the Copenhagen-Oslo ferry in 1990 and realized that their room had everything they really needed. Just as most people on a ship do not travel to stay in their rooms, so people don't travel to stay in their hotel rooms. They want to go out and experience the city. The hotel room is for resting and sleeping. It was Sunday, and we had enough time to get to the 2 p.m. service at the International Baptist Church of Copenhagen. After a wonderful service, we began to explore the surroundings. Being hungry, we began to explore food options and were rather shocked at the prices. But then we were relieved to find a Netto with reasonably priced groceries very close to our hotel. So we stocked up and headed for bed.
For 2 weeks, we ate, slept, traveled, and lived in modern-day Scandinavia. The scenery was often breathtaking. Yet, by visiting 2 open-air museums, one in Copenhagen, Denmark, and the next one in Bergen, Norway, we caught a glimpse of ancient settlements, the age of the Vikings from the 8th to the 10th century, and farm life to the 1800s. This is the time period when mass migration to the New World occurred.
Our budget only allowed us 2 weeks of travel. Therefore, we had decided that we would not have time for Sweden. However, When we realized that Sweden's third largest city was only a half-hour away across the Orient Strait from Copenhagen, we took a day to get a glimpse of Sweden as well.
When it comes to eating, of course, frukost is breakfast, then there's lunch, and in the afternoon, roughly 3 p.m., many people, if at all possible, take a break. We would call it a coffee break. And as you can see in the picture, you drink something, children come home from work, parents who are available stop working, and yeah, everyone tries to have a fika break.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes. Yes. They're all the same though, right?
Yeah.
Yeah. Just one order. Do we get
Hope you like it. Yeah.
I'm sure we will love it.
This is very famous?
Yeah, it's very famous among Asians. Have you tried this before?
No.
So how you eat it is you take one puri and eat this little bit in the puri and eat it in one bite. That's how you.
One bite.
Yeah, that's how you get all the flavors.
Okay.
Hope you like it.
Thank you.
Have a nice
I should hold it. Are you ready? This statue of one of Denmark's most well-loved citizens is Hans Christian Andersen. You might remember him as the author of The Ugly Duckling. Sometimes that story is taken to represent his personal life. There is also the statue of the mermaid, which is in the harbor. Many tourists stop to photograph and visit this place. The Little Mermaid is also from one of Hans Christian Andersen's stories. A great way for us to learn the history of the countries we visited, Denmark and Norway, was to visit an open-air museum. Scandinavian history begins with ancient settlements and leads to the famous Viking Age in the years 800 to 1050 AD. The mountainous geography dictated the layout, with outbuildings positioned to optimize shelter from wind and elements. Throughout our visit, in these open-air museums, we caught a small glimpse of the self-sufficient, resourceful, agricultural lifestyle adapted to Norway and Denmark's challenging geography. We also enjoyed glimpses of everyday life in Copenhagen.
The Frederik Church, popularly known as the Marble Church, Marmorkirken, is one of Copenhagen's most prominent architectural landmarks. What impressed us most during our visit was the visitors' total commitment to the request for silence. It features the largest church dome in Scandinavia, spanning 31 meters or 102 feet in diameter. The circular nave soars to approximately 46 meters or 150 feet in height. Along with many others, we reverently admired this tribute to the eternal God. The church is an active parish church of the Evangelical Lutheran Church of Denmark. King Frederik V wanted this church to be the centerpiece of the new Rococo district of Frederiksstaden, a grand urban plan designed to commemorate the 300th anniversary of the first coronation of a member of the House of Olenburg. Amalienborg, the principal winter residence of the Danish royal family in Copenhagen, is also a part of this district. It is not a single palace, but a complex of 4 nearly identical palace facades arranged symmetrically around a grand octagonal courtyard. A major attraction for visitors is the daily changing of the Royal Guard, which takes place in the palace square every day at noon. And in the center of the city, in a large park, Rosenborg Castle, the magnificent Renaissance palace. It was originally built as the country summer house by Christian IV, the longest reigning king in Scandinavia, just 5 days short of 60 years.
After Copenhagen, we boarded an overnight ferry to Oslo, Norway. This overnight ferry between these two cities is more like a mini cruise rather than simple transportation.
We had packed some food for breakfast, but then decided to splurge on the breakfast buffet as we entered the harbor. The sail into Oslo is spectacular, with the narrow channels lined with summer houses, small islands dotted with red and yellow cottages, forested hills rising on both sides. It's a slow, scenic cruise through the fjord for about 2 to 3 hours.
Due to their location, sea voyaging has always been a huge part of Scandinavian life. We thought it would be important to visit 2 ship museums. One of them had the ship that Amundsen Scott used to be the first to reach the South Pole.
The Fram Museum building has a very distinctive architectural design, shaped in a way that suits the massive frame of the ship inside. The construction was carefully planned to allow light control and to create a space that highlights the ship, while also supporting modern exhibition needs. The centerpiece is the original polar ship Fram, considered the strongest wooden ship ever built, and famed for having sailed farther north and farther south than any other wooden ship. A 270-degree surround film projected above the deck, together with a moving bench, gives an immersive polar storm experience.
We're on the ship on our way to the North Pole.
But when we found out that the North Pole had been reached,
We decided to go for the South Pole.
interesting to learn that prior to his voyage, he spent time in contact living with nomadic Inuit in order to learn dog sledge driving, igloo building, food and clothing, and other adaptations to Arctic conditions. All this knowledge contributed to the ultimate success of Amundsen's South Pole expedition in 1910 to 1912. As our tour took us below deck, we were able to enter the cramped and crowded quarters of the sailors' cabins. Pictures on the wall reminded us how tough it would have been to leave your wife, your children, friends, possessions for 2 to 3 years. It was interesting when we got a glimpse of an actual seaman's chest to see that a Bible was considered a cherished possession.
Across the street, the Kon-Tiki Museum tells the story of Thor Heyerdahl, a Norwegian explorer, ethnographer, and experimental archaeologist. He is famous for his 1947 Kon-Tiki expedition, where he and a small crew sailed a balsa wood raft from Peru to Polynesia to test his theory that ancient people could have made long sea voyages. It also houses the full-size reed boat, an enormous papyrus craft built in Morocco, with help from Egyptian boat builders. Seeing the actual vessels that made these crossings made the daringness of the voyages concrete. As we stepped into the museum's central space, a dramatic tall ceiling hall dominated by the original Kon-Tiki raft, we received a sense of both danger and camaraderie.
Who has not heard about the Vikings? They had fast, sleek ships, sails, oars. They were powered to come in quickly, to kill and to plunder. Being located north of Britain, Ireland, and Scotland, they soon discovered that the monasteries were prime targets for plunder. They were wealthy and poorly defended. Initially, the Vikings didn't understand the religious context of these sites. Interesting to note that St. Patrick was a missionary to Ireland in the 5th century, and now, roughly 300 years later, the Vikings come to this area and make contact with Christianity. By the end of the 10th century, the Vikings who were living in Ireland had adopted Christianity. The Vikings who converted to Christianity brought their new religion home when they returned. In addition to converted Vikings, monks and kings were also incredibly influential when it came to bringing Christianity to Norway. The Danish king Harald Bluetooth, and yes, the computer name Bluetooth comes from this king. He is famously known for converting to Christianity around the year 965.
The polytheistic nature of Old Norse religion allowed many Vikings to simply add the Christian god or white Christ to their existing pantheon of gods like Thor and Odin. For a long time, paganism and Christianity coexisted. The full conversion of Scandinavia occurred gradually over a period of 250 years, from the 8th to the 11th centuries, eventually creating the Church of Norway, which is the largest Christian denomination in Norway. The country is no longer officially religious. However, Norway's constitution now simply says that Norway's values will remain in agreement with Norway's Christian and humanist heritage. Approximately 62% of Norwegians still consider themselves members of the Church of Norway, although there has been a notable generational shift in active participation. True Christianity is found in the evangelical free churches. For example, Kristkirken, which we had the privilege to visit during our last full day.
The adaptation of Christianity helped the Vikings to resolve internal conflicts and unite the various tribes under a common religious identity. Imagine people learning about the Sermon of the Mount, the Lord's Prayer, the Ten Commandments, even the 23rd Psalm, the Lord is my shepherd. What a difference it made in their lives. In one of the museums, you can read a note how infanticide and child abandonment was one of the first things that was abandoned. No longer were unwanted babies just left in the woods.
As the Norwegians embraced Christianity, they began to build churches where they could meet to worship together. The result is called the stave church. The word stave is the Norwegian word for staff or pillar, and the design is unique. Stave churches are the finest and most distinctive architecture to come out of medieval Norway. Wood was plentiful and cheap, and locals were expert woodworkers from all the boat building. Inside, a church's structure makes you feel like you are in an overturned ship's hull. A distinguishing feature of the stave design is its frame of weight-bearing, tall, stout pillars called staves.
In language, a pillar or a column. So it is the framework of the building, what is holding it up. So like the log houses, that was the walls that was keeping the entire building up. Here is the pillars. It's not only these ones, there are a few outside as well. Yes, these are original, and the walls are only there to protect it from the weather. But we can almost see out through the cracks here, so it doesn't protect it from a lot of the cold.
The churches sit on stone foundations to keep the wooden structure off the damp ground to prevent rot. Most stave churches were made of specially grown pine, carefully prepared before being felled. As the trees grew, the tips and most of the branches were cut off, leaving the trunks just barely alive to stand in the woods for about a decade. This allowed the sap to penetrate the wood and lock in the resin, strengthening the wood while keeping it elastic. Once built, a stave church was slathered with black tar extracted from charred wood, applied with a pig's hairbrush, and then coated with crushed powder from charcoal to prevent it from the elements and from damage by animals, including insects.
While visiting this particular open-air museum, we had the joy of being there just as a group of young ladies celebrated their confirmation. Here you see them in their traditional costumes.
Around the Goldstave Church, which is located in the Folk Museum in Oslo, the rural agrarian society of the 16th and 17th century in Norway is depicted with 160 buildings representing different regions in Norway, different time periods, as well as differences between town and country and social classes. Most people were engaged in agriculture, cultivating crops like barley, oats, and rye, and raising livestock such as cattle, sheep, and goats.
So up until the early 1800s, 90% of the Norwegian population were farmers. So it could look like this. It could also be buildings just scattered around.
Homes were modest wooden structures, often with turf or thatched roofs, designed for practicality and insulation. Blacksmithing, carpentry, and textile weaving were common occupations, supporting both household needs and trade.
This row of buildings would have housed the animals. And this row of buildings is where the people lived and stored their food. Why are things in a row like this? Because this would have been a very hilly area, and so you put everything on one level, and then the next level, and the gardens were behind that, because you would take the manure from the animals and just shove it out and go down to the next level where the gardens are. Save you a lot of work.
Initially, the main living space was an open hearth house. Heating was mainly provided by a central hearth or fireplace.
Have a hole in the ceiling. So this is where the smoke is to go out. But if you've been around a fire, you know that smoke doesn't really want to go out where you want it to go. So they had to have other things that helped the smoke to go actually where they wanted. I get questions a lot about the doors. Why are they so short? But it's because the doors have to stay open the entire time the fire is on. If you close the door, the smoke would just lay on the ground as a carpet and then fill the entire room. So the doors are open, and that is why they're so small, because it would be freezing cold if they were this height. So the air comes in through here. The stone is also here for a reason. It takes the air to the side and then forces the smoke to go up. But if we take a look on the walls, it's very light colored down here, and then it just gets darker and darker. And this is very typical because smoke is everywhere. And you didn't, of course, really think about that it was smoke in the room. You were used to it.
People generally slept in the main living area, either on a raised wooden bed, a bed placed on the floor, or on benches that could double as beds. Family members had their own designated spaces or beds, often along the walls, little compartments with doors to keep in the warmth at night. I was amazed at the similarity of the rural schoolhouse to the one-room country school in which I received my first 8 years of education with my father as my teacher. The school law of 1860 in Norway was a landmark reform that mandated the establishment of permanent, dedicated schoolhouses in every rural school district. The most common design was a small building constructed primarily of wood, often with a red-painted exterior and a traditional sod roof. A small room, often intended for the teacher to live in, especially in remote areas. Another mainly one-room structure was the Christian meeting house, such as the Bethlehem Meeting House. These meeting houses arose from the intense Christian revival movements of the 19th century. Norway is famous for its dramatic natural landscapes, high standard of living, and rich cultural heritage. It is one of the world's wealthiest nations, largely due to its North Sea oil and gas reserves. It manages this wealth through the Government Pension Fund Global, the world's largest sovereign wealth fund worth over $1.5 trillion. Norway is the global leader in adopting electric vehicles. Roughly 80 to 90% of all new cars sold in Norway are electric. Norway consistently ranks near the top of the UN's World Happiness Report, known for its strong social safety net, gender equality, and high trust in government. When we noticed that stores are generally closed on Sunday, we could not help but wonder whether a day of rest also contributes to this happiness. The city of Bergen has a natural amphitheater shape with mountains on 3 sides and the sea on the 4th. This geography makes the city both dramatic and cozy, colorful wooden houses tucked between steep hills and the sea. We enjoyed walking through the historic waterside Bergen Fish Market, a special anniversary salmon meal, a reasonably priced meal at the Kronhagen Cafe operated by Church City Mission in Bergen, and the best of Hagelin, sampling of fish cake, fish wrap, fish soup, baked potato, fish bun at the Hagelin Sisters restaurant. It was here on the second last night in Bergen that we received an unexpected, unplanned gift, Kulturnatt.
As our time in Bergen was coming to an end, I noticed there was an interesting shop. I entered and was thrilled to see that it was a Bible bookstore right there on the main drag in a tourist area. The two volunteers who were running it were so friendly and helpful. I shared with them that I was curious about the church in Norway. They gave me a lot of background information. Then, when I told them that we were leaving the next day, a Sunday, and we would love to experience a evangelical church service, they gave us two options, and we were able to visit a church on Sunday.
Translation services into English are generally available. However, this was not the case when we visited. But as soon as the greeters realized we did not speak Norwegian, they sent Alexander to translate for us. Meeting Alexander was special. He works for Norwegian Church Abroad, a non-profit organization with a commission from the Parliament to serve Norwegians abroad. It has 28 churches around the world, some in popular tourist destinations and cities where many Norwegians live. Their stated vision is to know God, love people, serve our world. After the service, they host a cafe where people can hang out. This gave us a chance to interact with a vibrant congregation with many children and young people. Norway is synonymous with fjords, deep, narrow sea inlets flanked by steep mountains. One of the best ways to experience the dramatic natural landscapes is with the famous self-guided tour called Norway in a Nutshell. It is called In a Nutshell because it efficiently condenses the greatest hits of Norwegian nature: high mountains, deep fjords, waterfalls, and engineering marvels into a single accessible journey without requiring a car or extensive planning. The classic route connects Oslo and Bergen, typically including the following 5 legs. First, Bergensbanen, the Bergen Railway, Oslo to Myrdal. Secondly, the Flåm Railway, Myrdal to Flåm, one of the steepest and most scenic standard gauge railways in the world. It descends 863 meters down a narrow valley, passing thundering waterfalls and charming farmsteads. We chose to overnight in Flåm before continuing on the cruise the next day. A 2-hour boat ride through the Arlands Fjord and the Nærøy Fjord. The Nærøy Fjord is a UNESCO World Heritage Site and is the narrowest fjord in the world. Then a bus trip from Gudvangen to Voss, and then the final train journey to Bergen. I've chosen to retitle the trip from Oslo to Bergen, Grieg's Norway. The music of Edvard Grieg became inseparable from the beauty of Norway in 1991 when I had the privilege of producing the musical Song of Norway, together with many other wonderful staff members, at the Mennonite Collegiate Institute in Gretna, Manitoba. The musical tells the story of the life of the Norwegian composer and features a lot of his music. During this trip, we had the joy of visiting Troldhaugen, the former home and now a living museum of this famous composer in Bergen, Norway. Troldhaugen includes his villa, his composer's hut,
We got a lot of visits up here. A lot of people came at kind of all times of the day. And although Edvard Grieg would, maybe find this pleasant and nice, he would also say that we have too much visits. It's too much noise up here, too much distractions in many ways. So then he kind of wanted a place for himself where he can get the utmost peace and quiet and tranquility by composing his own music. And the book actually consists of Beethoven's sonatas. He would sit on it, stating that there are no better fundaments for creating your own music than to sit on the works of one of the greatest composers of all time.
and a concert hall where visitors can hear his music performed. The concert hall is strategically placed and designed so that his composer hut is visible by the audience during the concert. Grieg drew heavily from Norwegian folk melodies, rhythms, and cultural traditions, developing a distinctive musical style that captured the spirit of his homeland, painting a musical picture of the mountains, forests, fjords, and streams of this beautiful country. No wonder his music fits the photos and videos of the Norwegian landscape. To quote Edvard Grieg, "To paint in music in Norwegian landscape, Norwegian folk life, Norwegian history, and Norwegian folk poetry was for me where I believed I could achieve something." Grieg was a small man. His statue was life-size, 1.5 meters, which is 5 feet tall. Grieg faced incredible health challenges. Considering the health challenges that he faced, it is remarkable that he lived to the age of 64. Edvard Grieg's primary and lifelong problem was severe respiratory illness, likely tuberculosis, which began at age 17 and resulted in a destroyed left lung, chronic breathing difficulties, frequent infections, and eventually combined lung and heart failure. This poor health forced him to spend significant time in spas and sanatoria, often interrupting his composition. The death of his only child, Alexandra, as a 1-year-old, was a significant personal tragedy. This, combined with the stress of health and a demanding international performance career, and his wife Nina's resentment over her curtailed singing career, put a stress on their marriage. However, despite numerous hardships and stress, their bond was a harmonious blend of love, creativity, and resilience, with Nina remaining Grieg's best musical interpreter. According to our guide, their house played an important role in reconciliation.
Really sad, and Tolleven then kind of became a place for them to, you could say, come together, because obviously it took quite a toll on their marriage. The fact that they weren't able to have children. Edvard and Nina Grieg were actually first cousins also. So this was something of a place that they kind of, you could say, met and came together once again to continue on their life together. And Edvard and Nina Grieg, they spent about 22 summers here together up at Tolleven until he passed away, only 64 years old, in 1907.
Thanks to the support of a good friend, the couple reconciled and built their home at Troldehaugen. It became the place where they would return between their touring commitments, usually in the summertime, to relax and enjoy the tranquility of the grounds and surrounding landscape. It was truly heartwarming to be in a place that held such positive, happy, creative energy.